Ma'am said this truck goes. The tow driver's chains scraped across my driveway like claws on concrete. I stepped out, coffee in hand, still half in disbelief. Karen Mitchell from the HOA was already waving a clipboard like it was a badge. "This is community property," she barked. "No, I said this is my garage." The camera on my porch blinked red, recording every word, every threat. The tow truck kept idling louder than her voice. That's when I noticed her name already printed on the invoice, filed 03-17. That morning, they tried to take my truck. By nightfall, I was ready to take back the whole HOA. The sound came first, chains dragging against concrete, a rough metallic scrape that pulled me out of a Saturday morning quiet. Through the half-open garage door, I saw a tow truck idling at the curb, exhaust curling in the cold air. A man in a reflective vest leaned on the hook, looking unsure whether to proceed. Inside my garage, I still had my coffee steam circling the rim like it didn't want to leave. My tool bench caught the sunlight, every wrench aligned the way I liked. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, every inch of it, inside the property line my grandfather had paid to survey twice. "Morning," I called out, stepping onto the driveway. "You looking for someone?" The driver adjusted his cap. "Got a call from Meadowbrook HOA, he said. Said this truck needs to go." He nodded toward my pickup, parked exactly where it had been for 10 years. I let out a slow breath. Inside my garage, Ma'am said it blocks community access. From the street, a voice cut through the engine noise. "That's correct." Karen Mitchell, HOA compliance officer, was marching down the sidewalk, khaki pants crisp enough to cut paper clipboard, clutched like scripture. The same blonde ponytail pulled tight as a warning flag. I'd seen that walk before, equal parts confidence and complaint. "This area is common use," she said, heels stopping at the line where asphalt met my driveway. "You can't store vehicles here." "Store?" I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "It's parked in my garage. This apron counts as shared access." Her tone turned official, practiced. "You're in violation of Section 12 parking obstruction." I stepped forward, careful calm. The driver looked between us like he'd stumbled into a gunfight without bullets. "Before you go any further," I said, lifting my phone, "just so we're clear, this conversation's being recorded. Single-party consent. Perfectly legal." The camera's LED blinked once, red and steady. A silent beat. Karen's expression shifted just a flicker, but I caught it. People who like power rarely enjoy evidence. "You can't record me without permission," she said. "On my property I can," I replied. "You're standing at the line. Cross it and you're trespassing." She laughed softly, the sound sharp enough to slice through the morning calm. "That's not how this works." "Actually," I said, opening the manila folder I'd kept on the workbench, "it's exactly how it works." I pulled out a folded page, the tow invoice the driver had shown me when he arrived. Invoice number 1973. I read, holding it up to the phone. The camera lens caught the red stamp as I pressed it down. Filed 03-17. The thump echoed off the garage walls. Karen frowned. "You think paperwork scares me?" "Authority needs proof," I said. "Bring yours." The driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, maybe we should double-check." "Do your job," Karen snapped. He hesitated. "It's just this garage door's clearly." She cut him off with a glare sharp enough to nail him to the pavement. "You're obstructing community safety. We'll have it towed and fined." "Fine's the word," I said. "You'll get one yourself when you trespass that chalk line." I crouched and drew a mark across the concrete threshold, white dust cutting the gray. 42 feet, I said. Measured from the HOA's boundary stone. The line shone in the morning light like a declaration. 42 feet says otherwise. The driver rubbed the back of his neck. "Ma'am, he's got a point if this is his line." Karen's face flushed a deeper shade. "This entire area falls under association oversight," she said. "You can't just opt out." "Funny," I said, "that's what tyrants say." Her jaw tightened. She turned toward the truck, barking an order I didn't catch. The driver backed up half an inch, then stopped again, unsure. From inside the garage, the radio hummed low, a local AM station reading off weather alerts and diner coupons. The smell of coffee, the scratch of chain links, the tension between legal and stubborn, It all hung there like static. I kept my voice even. You want to call the sheriff? Go ahead. Bring every form you've got. But until someone shows me a deed that overrides mine, that truck stays. For a moment, nobody spoke. Only the click of the truck's hazard lights pulsed in the silence red flash mirrored on Karen's clipboard. She stared at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't recognize polite defiance, the kind she couldn't fine. Finally, she hissed, "You'll regret this." Maybe, I said, but not today. She spun on her heel and stalked back toward her car, the clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. The tow driver lingered another beat, then lifted the chain, muttered something about wrong address, and rolled the hook back into place. When the truck pulled away, the air settled. I stepped back inside the garage. The camera still blinked red. The file saved with a small chirp. I looked down at the chalk line bright under the sun and the stamped invoice drying on the workbench. My coffee had gone cold, but I smiled anyway. Some fights announce themselves with noise. Others start with silence and a clipboard. The envelope landed on my workbench like a verdict. Bright white, the kind that glowed even under garage light. Certified mail, return receipt, requested. I could still smell the paper before I opened it, chemical glue, heat, and the faint ghost of someone else's perfume. It was the third one that week. The first had claimed my fence was 2 inches too high. The second said my mailbox paint deviated from community tones. This one didn't even bother with politeness, it just read, "Final notice." I peeled the tape. The snap echoed across the bench, a silent beat in a quiet house. Inside were pages of violations printed on letterhead so proud it practically saluted itself, Meadowbrook Homeowners Association. Each item numbered each sentence ending with a fee. I flipped the page. Fence, non-compliant. Mailbox, color unauthorized. Siding hue, faded beyond tolerance. Someone, somewhere, was measuring shades of beige with righteous fury. I exhaled through my nose. They're running out of hobbies, I said to nobody. The garage smelled like motor oil and barbecue smoke drifting in from next door. Earl, my neighbor, was grilling again, same playlist on repeat country guitars fighting static. His laughter carried over the hedge like relief I didn't have. I unfolded the second sheet. Attached was a grainy photo of my property, time-stamped, circled, and annotated like a crime scene. And below it, another fine. A line at the bottom read, "Failure to comply may result in lien or vehicle removal." I laughed once dry. Vehicle removal. We'd already played that game. I reached for my binder, the one Laura had helped me start. Each letter, each picture, each note was logged with date and signature. I slid this new one inside, careful to align it with the others. Then I opened the deed, the same yellowing document that had lived in my father's desk for decades. The embossed seal caught the light like something holy. That seal was my prop, my anchor to sanity. I laid the new violation notice beside the deed and compared the maps. Their community boundary sliced right through my garage, but the plat overlay the one from the county showed the line 10 feet back squarely in HOA soil. I could almost hear Laura's voice from Chapter 3 waiting to happen. Facts outlive noise. I circled the line in pencil-steady hand, slow breath. Then I said it aloud, "Plat outranks your clipboard." Monday, I walked to the post office, the notice in my hand. The air smelled of grilled smoke and hot asphalt. Retirees chatted near the cork bulletin board debating fishing permits and gas prices. The clerk, same woman who'd been here 20 years, glanced at my stack. HOA, again. "Second set this month," I said. "Third," she corrected, stamping the corner with a rubber thud. "You mailed one last Friday." I smiled. "You should be on retainer. Already feel like I am." She slid me the green card proof of a certified mail. I filled in Karen Mitchell's name under recipient in neat block letters. Back home, I taped my response to the new letter, "Alleged violations. Paint, mailbox, fence. Provide written authority," and signed map verifying HOA jurisdiction over listed items. County plat enclosed. Below that, I added my line, "Send your authority stamped, not sketched." I copied it twice, one for the binder, one for the fridge. The fridge mattered. It kept me honest, visible. Every time I reached for milk, there it was a wall of certified defiance. Evening settled. The porch light flickered once before clicking steady. I sat on the steps listening to the neighborhood hum, sprinklers hissing, dogs barking, the faint metallic ding of a grill lid closing. A car rolled by slow. HOA patrol, probably. They always drove like they owned the asphalt, never waved. I folded my arms, leaned back against the siding, and watched the taillights fade past the oak. Sometimes intimidation wears a smile. Sometimes it comes on letterhead. Either way, I'd learned how to file it. The next morning, another envelope arrived. No return address, just Compliance Division. I tore it open before the coffee finished brewing. Inside, a single sheet, no greeting. Failure to repaint mailbox in approved tone will result in escalating penalties. And at the bottom, handwritten in blue ink, "Please cooperate." It's easier that way. I held the page up to the window. The ink bled a little under the sunlight. Someone had added a smiley face next to the signature. That was the comment trigger, the spark I didn't need but expected. I grabbed a pen, drew a small circle around the note, and whispered, "Easier for who?" The garage door, motor, groaned overhead. My pickup sat there spotless, waiting. I slid the new notice into the binder under February. It clicked shut with a sound that felt final. Before I left for work, I looked at the boundary chalk line still faint on the driveway, half washed by rain. It hadn't faded completely, neither had I. Every notice they sent only proved one thing, that they were guessing, and I was documenting. I pressed the county seal on the photocopy again, the ink fresh and firm. In the quiet that followed, I said it once more like a prayer wrapped in sarcasm. "Authority needs proof. Bring yours." The hum of the copy machine sounded like a hive behind the thin wall of the law office. I sat across from Laura Pierce, county legal aide, who'd traded a courtroom for a folding desk and a clock that always ran 2 minutes slow. The air smelled of toner and burnt coffee, the kind that had been reheated too many times. She tapped her pen once against the binder I'd brought, the same one I'd started weeks ago, now swollen with violation notices and certified slips. "They don't quit, do they?" she said. "They multiply," I answered. The binder's rings clicked sharp as if confirming. The silent beat hung there just long enough for the fluorescent hum to fill the gap. Laura adjusted her glasses and read through the top letter. "Fence color, mailbox height, even your siding hue. They're creating noise hoping you'll surrender before it hits a hearing." I said, "They want me to blink first." She smiled, thin but proud. "Then don't blink. Stamp." She reached for her coffee and motioned to the bulletin board behind her, filled with county hearing notices, yellowed forms, and a laminated flyer about plat maps. "You've got every artifact you need right here. What you're missing," she said, "is formality." I slid the deed across the table, the embossed seal still faintly raised. "That's my property line. They're citing bylaws written before the annexation." Laura turned the page sideways, compared it with the printed HOA map, and nodded. They drew a line with a highlighter. "You've got a registered plat." She took a fresh page from her printer, typed the words slowly. "Cease and desist unauthorized enforcement." The rhythmic click of keys replaced the machine hum. "We'll attach your evidence binder as Exhibit A. Keep it dry, clean, sequential." She turned the monitor toward me. "Read this. Make sure it sounds like you, not me." The letter began plainly. To Meadowbrook Homeowners Association Compliance Division. Pursuant to County Property Code FAR 12-07, cease further action relating to parcels beyond HOA boundary as recorded by deed reference. My name looked small under the signature block, but it felt heavier than any fence. Laura asked, "You want to file today?" I hesitated. The thought of another confrontation made my hands tighten. "If we do," she continued, "they'll have to respond formally. That means date, signatures, and paper you can hold." I said, "Paper outlives noise." She grinned. "Exactly. And facts don't flinch under a stamp." Her voice softened just enough to make the hum fade. She handed me the folder with the typed pages. The binder beside it waited open rings gleaming. I slid the cease and desist into the first sleeve and snapped it shut. The metallic bite of the binder rings echoed like punctuation. "File it," Laura said. "Today." I walked to the front counter where the clerk sat behind glass. The office smelled faintly of dust and copier ink. "Recording?" she asked. I nodded and laid the envelope flat. Her stamp came down with practiced certainty filed 1207, a mark of jurisdiction. The paper shuddered under the seal's impact. Back outside, the late afternoon light turned the courthouse windows gold. The traffic light at Main blinked red against the breeze. I could smell barbecue again from the diner down the block, smoke curling like memory. I thought about how the HOA wrote threats in ink, but never in law, how their powers stopped where the county map began. Laura stepped out behind me, tucking her hair under a ball cap. "You did the right thing," she said. "They'll try to rattle you. Don't let them. Bureaucracy feeds on reaction." I said. "They've been feeding well." She smiled. "Starve them." We stood a moment under the courthouse awning. The flag above the lawn cracked once in the wind. The sun caught the courthouse seal on the envelope in my hand, bright round official. It looked heavier than it was. Back home, I placed the new document in the binder between the violation letters and the deed copy. The rings bit again as I closed it. Silent beat. I ran a thumb along the spine, felt the edges of every certified envelope stacked within. For the first time, the binder looked less like defense and more like preparation. I turned off the garage light, the hum fading to nothing, and thought of Laura's line echoing in my head. Facts don't flinch under a stamp. The footage began in green. Night vision static pulsed across the monitor numbers glowing at the bottom corner, 3:15:04. A porch light flickered once, then held steady, catching a pair of shadows on the driveway. I leaned closer, frame by frame, each click of the keyboard a pulse in my temple. The cursor blinked in rhythm with my breath. Outside, the neighborhood slept. Inside, the truth looped on repeat. 2 figures, one male, one female, stepped over the chalk line I'd drawn weeks earlier. The camera's field caught the Meadowbrook logo on a jacket sleeve, the reflective tape bright as accusation. One carried a flashlight, sweeping it across my garage door. The other held a clipboard. They paused, whispered something, then crouched by the boundary pin set into the concrete. The sound of metal scraping concrete hissed through the speakers. Right there, I muttered, freezing the frame. The timestamp read 03:15:28. The cursor blinked again, waiting for command. I opened the hardware store receipt on the desk, the one from when I'd bought that exact pin. A stainless survey marker threaded base receipt dated 4 months earlier. The ink had smudged where my thumb pressed too hard. I laid it beside the monitor, aligning time with evidence. Proof didn't need volume. It needed light. I rewound the footage 5 seconds. The flashlight beam jittered, then steadied. A hand reached down, twisted the pin half a turn, then looked back toward the street. I caught the face in the profile. Karen. Even in night vision, that jawline was unmistakable. The camera hummed softly. Mechanical patient. At the edge of the frame, the motion sensor triggered my porch light. The shadows froze like thieves in a photograph. I whispered to myself, "Got you." The cursor blinked again. I typed the label across the screen. Exhibit C, CAM 03:15. The file saved with a short beep and the same tone my coffee maker used at dawn. I leaned back in the chair, rubbed my eyes. The clock on my desk read 03:46. In the silence, the refrigerator clicked on, breaking the still air. I poured a glass of water, stared out at the dark line where my driveway met the street. Somewhere beyond that was the HOA's imaginary border. The porch light timer glowed faintly from the outlet, its red digits steady. I remembered buying it at the same hardware store on a day that had seemed ordinary. I'd programmed it for 3 a.m., just enough overlap with the motion sensor to catch anyone curious. People said paranoia was unhealthy. I called it preparation. At dawn, I printed still frames from the footage, each with timestamp and coordinates. I stapled them to a report page and slid the packet into the binder behind Laura's cease and desist. The binder's rings closed with that familiar metallic snap, a heartbeat of order. By 8 o'clock, the neighborhood was awake again. Lawnmowers started, sprinklers hissed, dogs barked. I carried the binder to the porch, sunlight already painting the concrete gold. Across the street, Karen's SUV idled in her driveway. She pretended to check her phone, but I saw the glance toward my garage. I raised my coffee mug in a silent toast. She didn't wave back. Inside, I composed the cover sheet to County Clerk, Code Enforcement Division. Subject: unlawful entry. HOA, trespass, evidence. Attached Exhibit C, CAM 0315, video and stills. At the bottom, I added the line Laura always used. Facts don't flinch under a stamp. Then, almost on instinct, I wrote below it, paper outlives noise. The printer hummed again, steady and certain. When I walked to the post office, the same clerk was sorting mail behind the glass. More paperwork, she asked. Proof, I said. She stamped the envelope, the thud echoing like punctuation. You're building quite the case, she said. Or just writing history, I replied. The green card slipped across the counter, fresh and blank. I signed it, initials sharp, date precise. The smell of barbecue drifted in from the diner next door. Meat, charcoal smoke, all anchors to normal life, while mine turned into record-keeping. That night, I watched the footage one more time before saving it to an external drive. 0315. The moment the HOA crossed from authority to trespass. The cursor blinked one last time, then froze as I clicked export. The progress bar filled like sunrise. I shut down the monitor, the room dim again except for the porch light outside. It glowed on the driveway's edge right where the pin stood untouched, now catching light like a promise. I closed the binder, ran my hand over the spine, and set it again quietly to the dark. Paper outlives noise. The folding chairs scraped like metal whispers as the room filled. The community hall smelled of burnt coffee and dusted carpet cleaner. A bulletin board stood near the entrance covered with flyers for bake sales, lost pets, and a half-torn notice that read, Special HOA Hearing. Open to residents. The mic light on the podium glowed steady red, waiting. I stood at the back for a moment, binder pressed against my chest. The embossed seal on the front caught the fluorescent glare, a tiny sun in a field of paperwork. Laura Pierce was already seated in the front row, hands folded, expression calm but sharp. She nodded once when she saw me. No words, just a look that said, steady now. Karen Mitchell stood at the podium, clipboard in hand, voice smooth as varnish. We'll begin tonight's meeting with compliance updates, she said. A few residents have refused corrective action on matters of property standards, including garage encroachments and unauthorized modifications. No names yet. She never started with names. I set the binder on the folding table beside the coffee urn, flipped the latch, and let the rings snap open. The sound cut through the murmur like a trigger being pulled. Every head turned for half a second. I walked to the front. Madam Chair, I said, voice level, before you continue, I'd like this entered into record. Karen blinked. Sir, please wait until the comment period. This concerns your statement, I said. And the record you're reading from is incomplete. Laura rose from her chair. Under county procedural rule, he has the right to submit evidence before continued discussion. Karen hesitated, lips tightening. Proceed. I handed her the folder. The top page bore the county stamp, clear and black, filed 1207, cease and desist, unlawful enforcement. Behind it, the project overlay showed the HOA boundary in faded blue ink and my property line in red, 10 feet of daylight between them. Karen glanced at the map, then at me. This doesn't alter community standards, she said, voice quick defensive. No, I said. It clarifies them. A murmur rolled through the rows of folding chairs. Someone coughed. Someone whispered, that's his garage. I stepped up to the mic. Its light flickered once, then steadied a silent beat. "This community runs on paper," I said. "So here's mine." I held up the deed, the embossed seal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Recorded, verified, county, registered. Not a sketch, not a flyer, not a threat on letterhead. Paper that holds weight. Karen straightened. "This isn't the forum for legal debate. Then make it the forum for acknowledgement." "Excuse me, on mic?" I said the words crisp enough to echo. "Acknowledge." The mic hummed a low electrical tone between us. She looked to the other board members for help, but they stared at their papers like witnesses hiding from light. Laura leaned forward, elbows on knees, waiting. Karen's voice trembled slightly. "The association regrets any louder," I said. Her jaw set. "The association regrets any misunderstanding regarding property boundaries. That's not acknowledgement." She exhaled through her nose, then spoke again. The red mic light steady on her face. "For the record, the property at 814 Willow Court is not within HOA jurisdiction." The room went silent, except for the coffee urn hissing in the corner. The clerk, sitting near the projector, typed the words into the transcript log. Each keystroke felt like a nail sealing the lid on something old. I let the silence hang, let it settle. Then I said quietly, but clear enough for the mic paper outlives noise. Someone in the back clapped once, then stopped. A few others followed, cautious at first, then louder. Folding chairs creaked, hands met. It wasn't applause for me, it was relief for proof for limits for someone finally saying enough. Karen lowered her gaze. "We'll update the records accordingly," she said, voice thin. Laura stood beside me, whispering, "You just made it public record." "That's the point," I said. The board voted to close the matter pending correction. It sounded bureaucratic, but felt final. After the meeting, people gathered near the bulletin board reading the printed agenda as if it had changed mid-page. A man I'd only nodded to before said, "Took guts." Another handed me a paper cup of burnt coffee and added, "'Bout time." Someone fought back. I smiled, tired but steady. "Finally, someone fought back," I said almost to myself. Laura chuckled softly. "You did more than that. You set precedent." We packed the binder. The red mic light dimmed. In the hallway, the echo of chairs folding and doors closing sounded like a release valve hissing open. The air outside felt cooler, freer. I looked down at the seal pressed into the deed's paper, raised tactile, undeniable. The courthouse copy would hold it forever, maybe outlasting every meeting and every board that tried to redraw the map. Proof had a hum of its own, and tonight it filled the room. The courtroom door sighed shut behind us, heavy oak meeting frame with the finality of a vault. The gavel's echo from the previous case still hung in the air, 3 beats that sounded less like justice and more like permission. Laura walked a step ahead, her heels soft on the tiled floor. She nodded toward the docket board. "You're up next," she said. The letters on the screen blinked alive. Meadowbrook, HOA versus Whitaker motion to clarify jurisdiction. The clerk called our names. The courthouse clock over the bench read 10:42, and for a moment I thought about how many hours of my life had been measured in waiting rooms. The judge entered, robes swaying, glasses low on his nose. "Let's make this quick," he said, voice half weary, half amused. "You've both been busy." Karen sat 2 rows behind the HOA attorney, shoulders stiff. The man beside her had a stack of files and a tie the color of cold steel. I had my binder thinner now, but heavier with meaning. Laura placed it neatly on the table, opened it to the first tab, and whispered, "Breathe when he reads, not before." The clerk swore us in. The microphone hissed softly as the recorder clicked on. Silent beat. The attorney began his speech, polished and practiced. "Your Honor, this association operates under duly ratified bylaws which—" The judge raised a hand. "And which property line are we talking about?" The attorney hesitated. "Parcel 814. Willow Court." The judge looked at me. "You're the owner?" "Yes, sir." "And you filed a cease and desist regarding HOA enforcement on your parcel?" "Yes, sir." He tapped his pen. Let's see it. Laura slid forward the stamped document, the order 812-07 attached with exhibits camera footage plat overlay transcript from the hearing. The judge scanned it quickly, eyes narrowing at the bold print that read, "Acknowledgement entered into record." He looked over his glasses. They already admitted this property's outside jurisdiction. Karen's lawyer cleared his throat. That statement was informal. "Your Honor, we request clarification before the judge," interrupted again, voice firmer. "Then let me clarify for you." He reached for his fountain pen, the kind that left deliberate lines, and signed his name across the bottom of a fresh form. The clerk's stamp thudded down Order 54B Release and Unlock. The ink shone wet under the courtroom lights. Laura's lips curved. She whispered, "That's your clean break." Karen shifted in her seat, whispering furiously to her lawyer. The judge ignored them. "This order dissolves any implied claim or restriction by the Meadowbrook Association upon Parcel 814. Locks, gates, liens removed by close of business today." "Understood." The lawyer swallowed. "Understood, Your Honor." The judge leaned back, looking at me. "You document well, Mr. Whitaker. Most people just yell. You wrote." "Writing lasts longer," I said. He smiled. "Orders and opinions." The sound of the pen cap snapping closed was sharper than the gavel that followed. When we stepped into the hallway, the hum of fluorescent lights replaced the echo of authority. Laura handed me the certified copy. "Keep this one dry," she said. "The ink's still alive." I turned it over in my hands. The red stamp bled slightly where the paper-creased Order 54B centered under the county seal. Beneath it, the clerk's signature trailed like a ribbon. Outside, the sky was an almost theatrical blue, the kind that made courthouse steps look like a stage. Karen and her lawyer exited through the side door, avoiding eye contact. She held a keyring in her fist, silver, glinting between her fingers. Laura saw it too. "They'll have to turn those in." "Locks change now," I said. "Exactly now," she replied. We walked to the parking lot. The wind carried the faint chime of the courthouse flagpole halyard, clinking like a metronome. I opened the passenger door and set the binder on the seat. Inside, the keys to the HOA gate copies Karen had issued when the neighborhood was built sat in a labeled envelope. I held it up to the sunlight, the brass catching gold. "Never thought I'd be returning these," I said. Laura smiled. "Think of it as closing a loop. Evidence becomes artifact." At the clerk's side window, I handed over the envelope. The latch clicked shut behind the slot, another silent beat. The woman behind the glass stamped, "Received 10:58 a.m." Outside, the air smelled faintly of cut grass and courthouse coffee. The tension that had lived in my shoulders for months began to ease. For once, I didn't need to speak or defend. The paper had spoken. Laura paused at the bottom of the steps. "You realize this is precedent," she said. "They'll cite your case the next time a board overreaches." "Good," I said. "Let them learn where lines are." We shook hands, her grip firm, steady, real. "You still recording everything she asked?" "Habit," I said. "Proof's cheaper than memory." She laughed quietly, walking toward her car. I stood there another minute watching the courthouse doors close, the seal above them gleaming in late sunlight. In my pocket, the order's crisp edge pressed against my palm, a tangible end. Orders and opinions. And sometimes they open locks. The printer chirped once its rollers sighing as another page slid out warm. Numbers, lines, and signatures filled the sheet, a balance ledger, every column a quiet confession. The desk lamp burned low, casting a yellow circle over the pad. Outside, the diner across the street was closing last cups, clinking under fluorescent hum. I laid the Order 54B beside the ledger, the seal faint now, but still raised. Proof aged better than people. My hand brushed the keys I'd returned, still resting where the clerk had forgotten to file them. They caught the light like relics, not tools. The courthouse had mailed a copy of the receipts posted notice that morning. All wrongful assessments refunded within 10 business days. The paper had a faint smell of toner and vindication. Laura Pierce knocked twice before stepping in. "You're still at it," she said, half smile, half sigh. "Old habits," I said, making the numbers match the story. She set 2 diner cups on the desk, one for me, one for herself. "Coffee's on me. They comped us after the hearing. Guess justice has perks." I laughed softly. "They'll learn to budget for refunds next time." She pulled up a chair, flipping open her notepad. "County sent the reconciliation form. You'll need to sign at least 3 copies." "I've got ink," I said, tapping the pen. The room filled with the sound of paper sliding of the printer humming back to life. Outside, a truck rumbled by, taillights sweeping red across the blinds. Laura leaned forward, scanning the ledger. "They're paying it back in full, even the inspection fees." "That's their acknowledgement," I said. "Money always speaks the truth last." She nodded, then pointed at the final column. "You see this community reimbursement pool? That's not optional." I followed the line with my finger. Refund totals beside every address. Families who'd stayed silent when my garage door became an agenda item. They'd benefit too. I didn't mind. "Print those checks," I said quietly. Laura paused. "All of them refunds." I said the words grounding me. "All of them. Mini Cliff." The printer started again, a rhythmic chirp that sounded almost cheerful now. The pages stacked in neat rows like breath returning to a chest. The silent beat came when I reached for the stamp, the same one I'd used on every piece of evidence. My hand hovered, then pressed it down hard. Thunk. The seal bled red across the top margin. Laura smiled. Full circle. I looked around the small office, same diner cups, same tired fluorescent hum, same corkboard on the wall filled with receipts and clipped notices. Yet, something had changed. The tension that once lived in every document had drained away, replaced by a kind of measured quiet. She said, "You could stop now. They've apologized. Refunded, revised the maps. No one would blame you for stepping back." I shook my head slowly. "It's not about blame. It's about record." She tilted her head, thoughtful. "Then record this moment too. Not every ledger shows loss." The door opened slightly. The courier slipped in cap, pulled low. "Delivery for Pierce and Whitaker." He handed over a padded envelope postmarked from the HOA's new treasurer. Inside were cashier's checks, each with a stub labeled Restitution per Order, 444B. Laura sorted them by street efficient as ever. They didn't even argue this time, she said. They learned, I replied. Orders and opinions. She grinned. You remembered. I signed the reconciliation log at the bottom next to the county logo. Make the ledger tell the truth, I said softly. That's all any of this was for. She tapped her pen against the desk. That line's going in my lecture slides. I stood, stretching the fatigue replaced by something steadier resolution. The keys on the table glimmered once in the lamplight. I picked them up, turned them over in my palm, and then set them into a small evidence pouch labeled Archived. Laura poured the last of the coffee. So, what now? Tomorrow, I said, I walk through the gate without checking the line. She smiled, slow and genuine. Took you long enough. I looked out the window. Across the street, the diner's neon sign flickered open, then closed, then finally dark. The streetlights glowed pale on the quiet pavement. Everything felt balanced, measured even. The printer clicked one last time, spitting out the final confirmation receipts posted. I placed it in the binder between the cease and desist and the court order and closed the cover. The rings bit down with that familiar metallic bite echoing through the quiet room. Laura stood gathering her notes. You know, she said not everyone gets the luxury of seeing justice reconcile in real time. Guess I'm not everyone I said. As she left, I turned off the lamp. The room dimmed to the faint glow of the printer's power light, a single green dot blinking steady. Outside, a wind rustled the flag above the courthouse. Somewhere inside, a clerk stamped the last refund form. The echo carried faintly through the hall. Justice wasn't loud. It was measured, printed, signed. And for the first time it balanced. The morning light came clean and gold through the oak branches glinting off the bronze that waited on the porch table. The tarp rustled once as I unwrapped it, the plaque smooth and heavy letters already warming in the sun. Boundary restored. Order 44B. County verified. The embossed seal shimmered like quiet applause. Neighbors began to gather by the fence line, hands in pockets, eyes still half doubtful, half curious. The bulletin board invite had called it a community dedication. I called it closure. The courthouse clerk had delivered the transfer order early that morning, final proof that jurisdiction and maintenance now belonged to the county, not the HOA. The header bore the county crest, and beneath it filed and recorded, Public Archive. Laura arrived with a folder tucked under her arm. "Ceremonies make people comfortable," she said, smiling. "Even justice likes a script." I looked at the plaque again. "Doesn't need much dialogue." She handed me a small envelope. Inside were the old keys, the same ones I'd returned, now tagged archive copy. "They wanted you to have them," she said. Symbolic gesture. I turned them over in my palm. They felt lighter now. Across the yard, the HOA board members stood together, Karen among them. Her clipboard was gone, her expression unreadable. The new treasurer held a printed receipts, posted notice ready to tack on the bulletin board beside the bake sale flyer. Time has a way of humbling even the loudest rulebook. Laura adjusted the mic on the portable stand. Its red light flickered, then steadied a silent beat. The wind shifted through the oak leaves, soft but certain. She spoke first clear and steady. "This community has seen how paper patience and persistence can outlast assumption. Today, we mark not division, but understanding." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. She nodded to me. "Your turn." I stepped forward, plaque in one hand, the county transfer order in the other. The oak behind me creaked as the breeze pressed through it. "I didn't plan to be standing here," I began. "I just wanted to park my truck in peace." A few chuckles broke the stiffness. But when lines blur, someone has to redraw them, and sometimes all it takes is a pen, a stamp, and the will to stand by both. Karen looked down. The new board chair lifted his chin slightly, waiting. I raised the plaque. "This isn't about winning," I said. "It's about remembering where boundaries end and where respect begins. Boundaries honor everyone." The wind caught the words, scattered them through the oak leaves like something worth keeping. Minnie Cliff. I knelt and fixed the plaque onto the concrete post where the boundary pin once stood. The screwdriver slipped once, then found its bite. The final turn clicked sharp and satisfying. The plaque sat flush, its bronze letters bright against the old concrete. Laura began to clap first, then others followed. The sound grew steady, filling the morning air, echo and legacy in the same scene. A moment that didn't need translation. I stood, brushed dust from my knees. Finally, someone fought back. A man near the bulletin board said under his breath. I smiled. "Not fought," I replied. "Just filed." People laughed quietly. Even Karen managed a small nod. Laura stepped closer. "You know," she whispered, "most fights end with noise. Yours ended with proof. Paper outlives noise." I said, echoing the line that had carried me this far. She handed me one final document from her folder. "This is the closure note from the county, says you're free of all pending disputes." I took it, folded it carefully, and slid it into the binder for the last time. The rings clicked shut, metallic, familiar final. As the crowd thinned, kids chased each other around the oak. Someone from the diner brought over coffee in paper cups. The bulletin board behind us looked different now, less about warnings, more about upcoming picnics. The wind brushed across the new plaque again, the sound almost like a sigh of relief. Silent beat. Laura stood beside me, hands in her coat pockets. "Think they'll remember this?" she asked. "Maybe not the details," I said, "but they'll remember the feeling." She smiled. "That's legacy." We watched as the sunlight crept higher, reflecting off the bronze until it was too bright to look at directly. The plaque bore no bitterness, no victory, just record, the kind that would stay long after our voices faded. I looked toward the oak, its roots deep where the boundary once divided neighbors. "Funny," I said, "how something so still can settle an argument." Laura laughed softly. "That's the thing about truth, it doesn't move unless you make it." I nodded, letting the quiet stretch. The air smelled of grass and coffee, the familiar rhythm of ordinary life returning. Somewhere behind us, the courthouse bell chimed the hour. I ran a hand across the plaque's warm surface. Bronze steel paper, all saying the same thing in their own language, "This is settled." And as the crowd dispersed, I thought again of that diner phrase, that echo line that started everything. It felt truer now than ever proof turned legacy noise turned silence. Finally, someone fought back. The bronze plaque caught the sun, its seal glowing like a quiet verdict. Around it, voices softened, the last ripple of the ceremony fading under the oak's shadow. The county transfer order rested in my jacket pocket, proof that the paper, not the shouting, had settled it. I looked at the old boundary pin, now anchored beneath bronze, the air smelling faintly of coffee and grass. Justice isn't loud. It's steady. The fight had never been about fences. It was about respect, written and signed for all to see. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.